Welcome to the Sedona Soul Sisters show, where we have down-to-earth discussions on spiritual, metaphysical, paranormal, and healing topics. The Sedona Soul Sisters are Roz Reynolds, Carrie Ann Russell, and myself, Ivory Lanoux. We have offices in Sedona where we see clients from all over the world. Today's topic is spirit communication. If you have questions and you're here with us live, you're welcome to raise your hand and we'll let you ask that live, or you can type it into the chat room and we'll answer it live on the show. For those of you watching later on our YouTube channel, you can email us your questions and it's right there in the information how to get that to us. We'll answer it at any time for you. So what we're really focusing on today is spirit communication, is like how you can communicate with your deceased loved ones. That's a topic that's been coming up not just for us, but for mediums. All the mediums I know, it's been coming up in readings more and more over the last 4 to 5 years.
And I think it's good to also tie in with the concept that they don't always wish to communicate when you do. So that doesn't mean that they are not going to communicate at some point. It just means that, you know, whatever's going on with the frequencies and the connectivity that particular time, you know, is somehow not working, because there's so much disappointment with that for people.
They feel bad that they can't connect, or especially if it's very soon after too. Mm-hmm.
It's true. So, and also, I mean, another factor is I think a lot of people, what I experience is a lot of people want to come in, either it's a couple, it's siblings, they want to try to connect. So there's all kinds of things going on in their different energy fields that can create conflict and difficulty. I feel like if you're having the desire to communicate, you have to kind of work on yourself a little bit first and be ready to hear or experience whatever comes forth. And a lot of people have so much invested emotionally in hearing what they want to hear when they want to hear it, and it doesn't always work that way.
I've come to the conclusion that a lot of times when somebody wants a mediumship session and they've recently lost a loved one, when the spirit won't come through or can't come through is when the person is still very emotional, in the early stage of grief, and your energy is in such turmoil that it doesn't match with the frequency of the afterlife, and they just can't come through, because it'll be almost like they're pushing to come through and they can't. And so that's probably the biggest reason. It's not that spirit doesn't want to come through or isn't able to come through. It's your energy that isn't conducive to mediumship when you're still that upset. So if you are pretty calm about, if you've lost somebody you love and you're pretty calm about it, you're not sobbing easily, you're not feeling that real heaviness in your heart, I think you're going to be okay. You have a good chance of having a good reading. But if you're tearful and you're barely holding it together, that's not a good time to try to do a reading. And the more people there are in the room, the more chance we're going to have issues. So that's just another thing to think about too, is it's just that many more people's energy to take into account.
That's why I'm glad we're doing this show today, because, you know, a lot of people especially right away, you know, they want them to come through so much, and they don't understand what it takes for spirit to come through, for us to keep that bridge of communication open for that long. And, you know, when you're fighting it, it drains us as well. So it's, like you said, it's not conducive to the whole situation. And sometimes it actually makes the client end up feeling worse about themselves or their situation.
And it can make the medium sick. I've had that happen to me where I was trying so hard because somebody was so desperate and it just wasn't happening. I ended up sick for a week or more. So, you know, we learn these things through practice and experience, and I think it's good to have some knowledge about this, but when it comes to communicating with spirit on your own, that's something spirit really wants. Like they're happy you set up a mediumship reading, but they would love to talk directly to you. They love you. They don't love us. We just happen to be able to hear them, see them, feel them. But they want to talk directly to you as their loved one. And it's been coming up in readings more and more frequently where they'll just flat out say a method of communication or show me a method of communication they feel that person will be successful with.
I think you always have to remember too, like I always ask people, especially if it's a fairly recent death, what, what do you feel? Not like, what are you thinking about? What do you want? What do you want to hear? What do you want to, it's about too, what you feel when you are trying to make that connection. Because what I find is, we're totally taught in our culture not to feel. So consequently, if you're trying to connect with a loved one on the other side, and 9 times out of 10, if you start to think about, well, do I feel them? Do I hear them, see them, whatever? Do I feel them? And what does my heart feel? And there's other little things that always happen when our loved ones come through, certain just little nuances of energy that happen. And we have to be paying attention to that and thinking about, okay, how does this feel to me? Do I feel them with me? Because the presence of the person is embodied in the physical, but it's also in the spirit. So if you're tuned in to that feeling, a lot of times that loved one is there, but you're not receiving, the 5 senses communication.
Or you're trying to conceptualize it, right? What did I just feel? What did I just see? What did I just hear? Like, is that really what I think it is? And I always say, because I am a healer and I feel a lot in my body, your body doesn't lie. Your brain up here can play games with you and your heart can play games, but your body, that feeling you get, whether it's fear, whether it's chills, right, whatever it is.
For a lot of people, is
Mm-hmm.
huge. A lot of times I find when spirits come in and I'm not inviting them, they just decide to arrive. I will experience, some dizziness, maybe a couple minutes or a couple seconds sometimes of just a little bit of, feeling that shift of frequency and energy. So I think there are a lot of very subtle things that we can look for.
And I agree with you. That's usually the first thing people are picking up. And I was talking to a client last week who lost their wife recently, and he's been feeling her presence very distinctly. And it was funny because as I was talking to him, I felt, I call it the spirit wind, where there's no source of air in the room, and yet you feel a cool breeze go by you, very distinct. I have that happen a lot. But I was talking to him and it happened. And then he said, I know she's with me because I'll feel the breeze. I'll feel like this breeze go by me. I said, I just felt it too. So, even when you're in the deepest parts of grief, you can feel more than you can hear or see. I feel like that just seems to be something that sticks with you. So that's a good place to start. There is the most annoying high-pitched whine going on outside, like they're cutting down a tree. So I'm going to mute myself between comments.
And we could talk about that too. The frequencies that some people hear, they don't know that's what they're hearing.
Mm-hmm.
But, just hearing changes in pitch in your ear, high frequencies, low frequencies, etc. It's not all a disease, folks. It's not all.
To me, that's always associated with angels. I don't get that with spirit, but do you get that with spirit, Roz?
Hmm?
Do you get the the different
Yeah.
frequencies you can hear
Very
from
high.
spirit.
Yeah, I
I
do too.
hear that with angels and archangels for sure.
I also hear it when very low frequency, not
Sometimes
so nice.
It's different sounding.
Come through.
that wah, 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 wah. I don't hear it very often, but I just get out of here.
Now, interestingly, in working with people who are trying to connect with their loved ones, um, what I usually hear is just a very neutral, sort of like static kind of noise. It does have a pitch to it, but and then the next thing, is that they come through. So there is something connected with them crossing through these veils and coming through that changes the frequency with that we're surrounded in. And I do ask people that too. Do you notice anything? Like, do you hear anything? And I've many times just point blank ask clients, do you hear them? Because the spirit will say, I talk to you. And I'll say, they're saying they talk to you. Do you hear that? Well, yeah, but I thought it was just in my imagination. No, your auditory nerve, if you have any little bit of clairalience in there and clairaudience and all that, you can smell, perfume, you can smell different things when they come through. I laugh about that because with a lifetime of severe allergies, I don't smell much that's going on in this dimension, but when spirit comes through, I can be receiving all kinds of scents. And the same thing with the hearing. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of things that our culture closes our mind to. And the more you immerse yourself in that concept of, oh no, it has to only be this in this little box here. You got to get out of that.
Like black or white, there's no gray area in
Yeah,
between, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So I find that what I ought to like to tell clients a lot too is like it's like a radio, right? Remember the old radios where you used to tune and have to turn them in and get them on that exact right spot so you could hear
Yes,
your song.
that's
That
so accurate.
That's what it's like, because it's like you're tuning a radio and your frequency has to match there, and they have to come down and bring their frequency down, and you have to bring your frequency up. So it's like that fine tuning, I think. And I think because people may hear that high pitch or that high frequency, they automatically think, oh, that can't be anything. But spirit is such a high frequency, right? That sometimes it just comes in with that. You can't hear it because you're not attuned to it yet. So the more you learn to tune your radio, I tell clients, the easier it will become.
I like that radio analogy because once you lock in on that frequency with them, then everything flows. But it can be a little difficult, like pulling teeth till that happens.
I think I always like to tell people I'm just like a radio with an antenna, and I think all of us have that ability and capability. It's more just allowing yourself to realize that everything we've been taught about all of this kind of stuff is usually not really true. So
For me in readings, when spirit does bring this topic up, and it will be either one of three things, either to say, I'm talking to you, like you said, Roz, and the person's like, well, I thought they might be, but I just, I thought it was wishful thinking. So not writing off things, just thinking that really you might be getting those communications and just talk back to them because they love that. Not sassy, but just converse with them. The other two things that they'll bring up sometimes later, tell me or show me, is automatic writing and using a digital recorder. And it's amazing to me, like spirit, who's been deceased a long time, knows about digital recorders. It's like they'll show it to me or they'll tell me. And it's so funny because they'll be like, well, they died, 30 years ago, and they were 90 years old. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how they know what they know, but they do. So they know you. These spirit know you. They know your strengths. They know what you'll be comfortable with, what will resonate for you. And then I just give the person some pointers of how to do that and point them in a direction of books if they need to, so that they can practice that and coach them through if necessary, but it just takes practice, I think, too, like everything else. It's a skill you need to learn.
Well, I think your point that you mentioned a little earlier about when you have so much grief and you have so much emotional reaction to that and you're crying and you're distressed, think about when you are connecting with things in your mind and spirit. It's during quiet time. It's not when you're so emotionally distraught, usually. And so I think spending a little bit of quiet time every day is helpful for people who want to make that connection and they feel like they're not. I also think it's a good idea to have your mind open to the possibilities that things that we think could never happen or were a coincidence if they happened, happen all the time when you're dealing with people in other dimensional fields. And I can give a classic example of my own experience, which actually was hilarious at the time. But I have a very good friend that I grew up with. Her mother and my mother were the best of friends their whole life from childhood. So I went to visit with them last Christmas, and our parents used to love to all play cards together, and they would have so much fun. They would just be laughing and carrying on. And her mother and my mom, were just always getting something going on in this group. So we're we're in her house. She's preparing for Christmas. All of a sudden, she walks out to her front door, and laying on the floor is a picture of her mother and my mother that was taken when they were around 20 together. And she just said, "Oh my gosh, they just let us know they're here and they're hanging out with us," because that picture was inside another picture frame behind the picture that was showing. And the picture that was showing was sitting right there on a table. She had not moved that picture frame. Nothing had gone on. And there it was, this cute little snapshot of them together as young girls, and we just started cracking up because we knew, okay, well, wherever they are, they're hanging out together, and this is their little sign that we're here.
They're still doing shenanigans.
Yep, they were good at that.
Technology things that spirit will do too. They're really good at it. And I was talking about this the other day, so it pops into the front of my mind. But I was doing a mediumship reading for 3 sisters some years ago, and they were there to talk to their spirit of their mother. And she came through really well, and her personality was showing. And I entered the amount that they would owe for their reading into my phone for Square. I turned my back to get a little something for them, and they burst out laughing. Like, what in the world? And I came back and I looked, and they pointed at my phone, and now it says like $1,500,000. And I'm like, that is not what I charged. So they're laughing. They're like, oh no, our mom, that's our mom. I mean, she is such a prankster, and they hadn't touched it. I was, 5 feet away, and they watched that just go from my regular price to $1,500,000. So
the pranksters.
Yes, yeah. A prankster. So if they're a prankster in life, they're a prankster in death, and they keep their personality. So if things happen, it can be finding things. A person that I know really well, when her husband passed away, she would find little pyramids of his favorite cereal, and she was such a fastidious housekeeper, so there was no way piles of cereal would go unnoticed. Like, she'd open the cupboard where her glasses were kept, and there's a perfect little pile, like a little, almost like a pyramid, a cone of his favorite cereal. Weird places like that in the kitchen. And it was obviously him, you know, trying to get her attention. So there's a lot of things that they can do. And if you're going to write it off as coincidence, you're going to miss a whole lot of signs from your loved ones.
True.
That is true.
True.
But dream visits too. Dream visits are one of the easiest ways, I think, and a lot of ways that my clients will have a visitation from a loved one is through a dream, because we're very receptive. We can't put any ego parameters around that visit. So a lot of my clients do experience dream visits as well. So you can be sure that if you think you've had a dream visit, they feel different too.
Yes.
I always explain.
Well, they're extremely vivid. And I know the first one I had was when I was in my 20s. And I still remember everything he said to me, what he was wearing. He was a dear friend of mine who we used to go disco dancing together. He's an amazing dancer, just amazing, really handsome guy. And he was all decked out in a suit like he would have worn when we went dancing. And I still remember all of that. So, but one thing about dream visitations is don't stress yourself out about it. You can't make it happen just because you want it really bad. You can ask for it and then just be receptive to it, but it'll happen. It's not easy for every spirit to do that. It's incredible amounts of energy for them to do that. So they may just not be able to do it yet, but if you want it and you keep telling them, I'm open to a dream visitation, you know, please come visit me in my dreams, they'll do it, but it just may not be on your timetable. So relax about it. Don't get all stressed.
Yeah, see, that's something I learned after Aunt passed. I wasn't aware that every spirit couldn't do everything. And so what he was teaching me was that every spirit has their gifts and their abilities as well. And so they're learning to work with that energy. And so it may be leaving something for you, or it may be coming in a dream visit, or maybe they're able to move things, you know. So they're also different in how they can communicate too.
When I do mediumship, I tell clients that just like every medium has their strengths, spirits have their strengths. And I spend about the first 5 to 10 minutes, it seems like, testing to see whether they can let me feel things in my body, whether they're going to be able to speak to me clearly, whether they're better at showing pictures or videos, or just letting me know. And then once I figure those things out they're really strong at, that's what I focus on, because they're going to have an easier time transmitting that to me. So it's a little bit of a detective process in the beginning. Like Terry Ann was saying, not all spirit can do everything, and they're not all good at everything. It's just, we don't know exactly why that is. You know, I'm sure it's a frequency issue on the other side as well.
I think another thing that's important to realize is many times you're going through your average, you know, everyday life. We get into our routine. Number one, we're not really paying attention, and paying attention is kind of crucial, because you have to be noticing all these little things we're talking about. But also, if you're pretty functional and you're doing okay, and it's been a little time since your loved one passed, they're not nearly as likely to come in as they are if suddenly you're dealing with something, you know, that's very upsetting to you, or you're having an emotional reaction about some other event that's going on. I very frequently notice that when people tell me their stories of what's happened and why they've come in for a mediumship session, a lot of times it has to do with something they've been going through, and then they realized that they were experiencing the presence of their loved one. So expecting them to just be kind of hanging out with us all the time when things are good, it's a little maybe self-centered. I mean,
Unrealistic.
because, you know, they have other stuff going on.
Yeah,
You
they have
know,
relationships on
the
the other
soul
side,
goes on.
tasks, hobbies. It's amazing what comes out in a reading about the afterlife. It's fascinating. I was going to say, what was I going to? Oh, okay. So one thing is when you are grieving hard, as people start recovering and getting out of the initial phase, they sometimes want to be around so many people and be so active and busy that they don't have to think about and dwell about their grief. And there is something to that, but like Roz was saying, you need to set aside some specific time where you're alone and quiet and focused to be able to pick up this kind of information. Like if you wanted to do a digital recording, you're gonna put your recorder in a quiet room, you're gonna spend 5 to 10 minutes, and oh great, your internet connection is unstable. That's nerve-wracking.
Okay.
Anyway, you're gonna put that there on the table and you're going to just ask a question and give it 20 to 30 seconds of dead space to let them respond. Ask another question or say something to them, leave a little bit time, and just do that when you feel up to it, because you're going to have to listen to it a few times, at least a few times later, so you don't want to go too long. But you can't do that in a crowded space. You can't sit in a crowded space and hope to hear your loved one talking to you. Then you really will be writing that off as though I probably heard that in the background. Somebody must have said that.
I've had situations too where clients have told me that this sounds a little off the wall, but even back in the time of landlines, their loved one had passed and their phone would ring repeatedly and there would be no one there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with our cell phones, of course, we have caller ID. And I have had 3 clients who received a text after their loved one had passed. And no explaining that. You know, I mean, you can try to make it up. Oh, well, the text was delayed. Well, whatever. But I think the ability to manipulate what you were mentioning, electronic devices and things, that has always kind of be taken into consideration too, because when you're in these periods of quiet and you are thinking, okay, you know, let me be at peace and you know, I would love to connect with you. You're kind of opening that energy field. Don't just expect them to come through in a metaphysical presence. Take that opportunity to see what your devices are doing. Sounds a little weird, but they seem to be able to manipulate that pretty easily.
Another thing I've seen is where definitely what you said about text coming up, and a client was telling me about it, and then it happened. Like their phone was on the reading table in my office, and boom, their son, his picture popped up, and it was a text from him. He's been passed for 7 years at that point. And the other thing that I've had a number of people tell me is that their loved one will pop up as a recent contact, meaning that they've talked to them on the phone recently and they've been deceased for years. So, and pictures will show up in their phone of the deceased loved one that they've never seen before. So there's so many things that can happen. I've had things happen with my cell phone with deceased spirit that I love and know. They can do a lot more. It's not just cell phones. It's any electronics. It's appliances, lights, computers, TVs.
Your TV.
My ex-husband, he died back in 95, 97. He would come in, I'd feel his spirit, and I'd say, David, if that's you, turn the TV on. Boom, the TV would go on. You know, I mean, he was good at that. I feel him here now. Hi, David. So they can accomplish a whole lot of things that you will try to write off.
That's true. Very true.
I can think of another one. My sister-in-law's mother, she lost her daughter, they lost their sister a couple years ago, and I went and did a big family mediumship session for them. And in the session, the mom asked her daughter, please give me a sign that you're with me. She was just grieving so hard, of course. So she's told me several times since then. She got back home, and the next day or so, She was sitting in her living room and she was thinking about her daughter, and the lampshade started to spin on the standing lamp next to her. And she said, Lori, if that's you, stop the spinning. Boom, it stopped. Lori, make it spin again. It started spinning. And since then, it's continued to happen. So it's really helped her with her healing to even have that, kind of connection with her daughter from the other side, to know she goes on. People just, you need to know that they go on.
Wow.
Marianne knows that.
I'm still wondering how I'm still here.
I think a big part of it is because you know for a fact that not only is your son's spirit go on, but the connection between you is so incredibly powerful that never dies.
Yeah, I think that's, people are always astounded when I was doing my podcast and everything that it had only been a year, and they're like, how is that possible? And I said, I think a lot of it had to do with having the ability to connect. In the beginning, I was like, no, but I think as time went on, having that ability to connect with him. And in the beginning, he was much more here daily with me. He stepped back a little bit. And I think that's because I've grown and I've shifted, and I was able to heal, through a lot of that. I still cry every day. I still probably curse at him every day too. That's never going to change.
Well, you're still human. You
I am.
still have to go through grieving, but you did come through that so much faster. I mean, Roz and I were with you when you were in the early stages, and that's not easy for anybody, but you're helping so many people to really grasp the concept of a continuing relationship. Even when one of you passes, it's not over. You haven't lost them. You have to adjust to a new type of relationship. I have that with several friends and family members who crossed over, where they come to me so regularly, and they have one of them, Tony, does this thing where he tugs on the hem of my shirt or the back of my nightgown. I'll feel this tug, and I know that's him because he would do that when he was alive. So they all have their little things that they do. Oh, and I wanted to mention that automatic writing thing. If you don't know what that is, it is a form of mediumship where you take a piece of paper and a writing instrument, a pen or a pencil, and you make loops on a page. You get into a light trance state after you do your spiritual protection, just like you would for mediumship, because you want to be sure the only spirit coming through to communicate with you is the one you want to hear from. So you start making these loops on a page, and when you get to the end of the page, you don't pick it up, you just go the other direction, and you keep going till you hear a word or a phrase. You write it down, you go right back into the loops, and the loops just help you get into a trance state and just empty your mind, so all you're focusing on is the loops. Some people it'll take them 10 pages to get their first word, and it's really about just relaxing enough and getting out of your own way. Some people hear word pretty quick at the end of the page. Some people are getting lines and paragraphs on page one. It's just about how fast can you open your mind and be receptive to these messages. But one thing to be aware of, because I thought I was really awful at it, and when I was training for mediumship, she said, let's do some automatic writing. I'm like, all right, but I know I'm terrible at it. So I'm making my loops and I'm writing words. And I said, no, this is just gobbledygook. It's nothing. It's nothing. And she reads it and she says, I agree. This is all about my life. This is about my husband, my dog, me. This is all about, so it's not necessarily going to be about you. You might get things for other family members who knew the spirit. So don't be too quick to discount it and think you're bad at it like Ivory did.
Well, you got to step out of your own way, right? You really do have to step out of your own way.
Yes. Isn't that true for any spirit communication though? I mean, what does a medium do? You have a natural talent, but it is really about training yourself to stop doubting, to stop trying to, like you were saying earlier, to stop trying to rationalize your messages. And, if you think, oh, that doesn't make sense or that sounds weird, I'm not going to say that. Well, you might be denying a person the one thing they really needed to hear. And I'll give an example of that. This is my favorite example. And if he's watching this show, he's going to be laughing so hard because it always seems to get back to him. He always knows I mention him. So I have a really wonderful client who came to me for mediumship, and his wife had passed. And we're doing the reading, and at one point I clearly saw the Three Stooges, and I started laughing. He goes, "What?" I said, "I see the Three Stooges." And I'm thinking, well, that's weird. And he starts laughing so hard. And what is it? He goes, "Well, the very last gift she gave me was a set of golf club heads with the Three Stooges on them." Like, oh, so he loves to tell people about that. But if I had thought, oh, that's goofy, why am I thinking of that in the middle of someone's reading, and didn't say it, that would have denied him of the thing that was most important for him to hear in that reading. And it's different for everybody.
I had a similar experience where I heard go jump and tell her to go jump in the lake. And I was like, what did you just say? I'm supposed to say what? And I was like, oh my God. It took me a few minutes to actually go through with it and tell her, because I was like, oh my God, did I really hear that? Like, where is this coming from? And I told her, this is what I'm hearing. I just have to tell you, this is what I'm hearing. And, they said, go jump in the lake. And it was her mom. And she's like, oh my gosh, my mom would say that to us all the time as kids, just go jump in the lake. And I'm thinking, oh my God, are you crazy?
I just thought of another one. I was doing a reading, and
It's
out of
funny.
the blue, like all of these things were coming up, and I heard Jiminy Cricket. And I kind of reluctantly said, I heard Jiminy Cricket. And they're like, and they didn't say anything. And then later they told me that is the nickname for that person. Like, that's the nickname, Jiminy Cricket. I haven't even thought about that in years. So it can be things like in a reading I was doing, out of the blue, I heard in my right ear, I heard a woman say, "I don't care what she does with my stuff." And I told her, and she busts out laughing. She goes, "Oh my God, I'm here because I don't know what to do with her stuff. I want to make sure she's happy with with what I do to disperse of her belongings." I'm like, well, she has no attachment to any of that whatsoever. She's like, "Oh, what a relief. Okay, I can go forward with that." So it's just, it can be anything. And that's not just in a mediumship reading. We're telling you this because you can be hearing messages which are going to be thoughts in your head, most likely.
Right.
But in the words that the spirit would use and something that's meant for you to know, you're getting that message. So if you push it away, if you say, "Oh, what a weird thought," or, try to ignore it, again, you want to be communicated with, then you have to be receptive to it.
I always say, if you hear like dude and you don't ever say dude, that's a clear indication that's not your own thoughts happening. It's like, somebody trying to get a hold of you that like the word dude, so.
And when you're in these situations, sometimes if it's something that could be connected to you as the medium trying to make this connection and help these people, that can become confusing too. From the standpoint of, I had a situation a little while back where some family members came in together and they wanted to talk to two or three whoever came through of these two or three people. So one of the persons that they wanted to connect with their mom, she was not, she did come through a little bit, but she wasn't really, bursting forth with any information or anything. But right before this session, I had received a text from my significant other. So all of a sudden, I'm in the middle of this session and this name comes up in front of me, and it was his name. And I thought, oh my gosh, why is his energy coming in here? Now, normally I would have said, okay, so does anyone know this person? Do you recognize this name? But I didn't say it. Well, it turned out that that was their father, and his name arrived before him. So it was so ironic because I thought that's a case where I second guessed myself and I didn't say anything. And then it turned out that that was who wanted to come through, and he did. So,
I think we've all done that, Roz, where you're not sure what you heard, or you're just not sure how that's relevant. So I've just learned,
I
Say
just
it.
think
Say it all.
you have to be so neutral.
You do.
You have to be so neutral.
We are the mediators between humans
Yeah.
and spirit world.
We're like the antennas that are picking up on this stuff, and you just have to have yourself disconnected from anything relevant to your world.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't stress that enough, right? To just try and
True.
step out of the way and allow that communication to happen. Because like you said, they don't want to talk to us. They want to talk to you. And they are trying to communicate with you most times, very often, you know. So you're just either not seeing, feeling, hearing, or you are and you're discounting it. And that's frustrating them as well. I mean, as much as spirit could get frustrated, they're like, hey, like I'm talking to you, you know, and I know they hear me. And then you say to them, you know, I hear they're telling me that they do speak to you. Do you hear them? And they're like, yeah, but I didn't think it was them, or, you know.
I know it's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and these are people that you just have to have so much compassion for that, because they're so lonely, they're so missing that person, but they just can't believe that communication is as easy to facilitate as it can be. You can do this.
That's true. And I
So,
think if you've heard of somebody who received a message in a certain way and you presume that's how you're going to receive it, that's another way to miss out. So you
mhm.
just have to be open in general to unusual things happening and take a moment to look at it and think about it, who that might be connected to. And I like to do this, like, and this is what I suggest for my clients, is that if something happens and you're not sure, you think it might be connected to your mother, then you're going to say, Mom, if that was you, can you do that again? You know, and usually they will do something. Or can you let me feel your energy? And then you're
or
going to know
just
how
give
you
me a
feel spirit.
sign.
Pardon?
A lot of times I'll go, give me a sign.
Yeah, give me a sign. You know, you don't have to tell them specifically what to do because you don't know what they're capable of. But sometimes they'll repeat what they just did. Or for me, it's often that spirit wind where, like, I have no fans, no windows open, but I'll feel that cool breeze go right past my face.
Yeah.
That's just spirit really moving through your energy. It's kind of hard to mistake that. But even as I talk about this, like, I'm feeling chills of a spirit coming in. I just feel it as the chills in my body. So you'll figure out how you feel it. It's different for different people. Some people get chills, some people feel cooler, warmer, or they feel a gentle touch. Some people just know they get a feeling in their heart chakra that expands when it's somebody they loved a great deal coming through. They'll just feel it in their heart chakra. So you'll have to practice with that to see how you feel spirit. How you feel one spirit is how you'll feel all spirit, but it's in different degrees based on the intensity of that person's frequency, how high it is, how powerful they've gotten to be.
And I think it's important to bring in too. I would like to have people realize that I recently lost my longtime pet. My friend lost her longtime pet. And I have experienced with all of my pets, when they have crossed over, they come and visit. And they do. I'll hear them barking. I'll feel this particular dog used to herd me when I would walk. He was an Australian Shepherd. He would put his nose on either side of my legs because he wanted me to go a certain way. And you know, you do experience these things with your pets also, because the grieving process for pets is just the same. I mean, it's like your fur baby, you know, is gone. So kind of like allow yourself to realize that these spirits, they don't just, you know, they're not energy that just goes away. That energy just moves into a different dimensional field,
It's
and
really
it
eternal.
can return.
Each of our soul, that frequency is eternal. I wanted to say too about these pets, like, I don't have pets because I have terrible allergies to fur and feathers, but I love animals.
Mhm.
So pets visit me every night, and this is another thing they do for me a lot is I'll feel like a cat jump up on the bed. That's a very distinct feeling, and it'll walk around and then settle down in a little ball and go to sleep. Or a dog will jump up and I'll feel it like jumping around on the bed, and it'll like cuddle up against my legs and go to sleep. And I find it very comforting because I can't have pets. So I have spirit pets, and there's pets I never even owned, I think, that are just visiting me. But you might be feeling that as well for your pets that have passed and not really be understanding that you can even feel them in that way.
I've
So
had people be in my office and say, um, a couple of different times, I feel this cat winding around my legs. There's a cat in here. Oh yeah, that's Dee Dee. She comes to visit every. I mean, what do you say? They know what it is.
Sedona Soul Sisters spirit cat.
Yes. So
Then we have James, who hangs out very frequently, who's
yes,
Roz's student and friend, and he was quite the character.
and now that's an interesting thing to kind of mention too, because this is a person that I obviously had a past life with. We had an amazing connection. We were telepathic to the nth degree. I mean, we could be in different cities, different times, and we would contact each other and go, hey, is this going on right now? So he passed away a couple of years ago now. I still see him, hear him. Every once in a while, I hear him. He always used to tell me if he was telling me something, and then he'd go Dalink, and I'll hear that. So this kind of connection this soul connection that you have, it's not just your siblings and your parents and everything. This is a soul connection that can be with your friends too, where you are soul family, and you have been together before and you'll be together again. And
Maybe we should talk about that on a show, like that frequency you're talking about, not even being in the same city or state, or how you come together with your soulmate, something like that.
yeah, and the telepathic connection that
Mm-hmm.
you have with these, because these are loved ones that, they didn't turn out to be a family member in this life, but they definitely
Right.
are family.
I have a friend like that, Leslie. She couldn't get into the show today. She just texted me, but I could just like look at her through her eyes and see her soul and just know there's this connection there from another life. And
Yeah, very powerful. I
mm-hmm.
think we're having a little bit of technical something with our connection today,
Today.
because yeah,
Why, what's going on?
you guys are occasionally freezing, like I can hear you talking, but you're not moving on
Well,
camera, and
same
then
here,
vice
Leanne
versa.
freeze. I haven't seen myself. I didn't know I was freezing.
No, I
So
saw you freeze, but not me.
It's
I
I'm
something going on in
here.
this area then, who knows?
they're probably working on something.
We're in 3 different cities, but within very close proximity of each other.
True.
It's hard to believe there's 3 little cities up here, huh? All with the letter, well, C. Well, you're not in a C today, Roz, but
No.
No, she's the one who's actually at Sedona Soul Sisters today. She's in her office there. Anything that you two want to add on today's topic? No?
I think we covered a lot.
I
I
think so
mean,
too.
it's a lot of stuff to absorb for people. So,
So
give it thought. If you have questions or something,
Mhm.
give us send us an email or a text or whatever.
we're here to help you. So don't
Yeah.
feel like it has to be during the show. We're available at any time. So thank you for watching the Sedona Soul Sisters show. If you'd like more information about us or our services, visit our website, sedonasoulsisters.com. We will be back next week on Friday, where our topic is cultivating compassion. We hope that you have an enlightening week.
Enjoy.
Oh no, hang on. I hope I didn't mess up the